You think your bad habit is the problem. It's not. It's the clue. And when you understand what it's really pointing to, you'll never fight it the same way again. Today, you're going to see your habits exactly how Carl Jung would. Not as flaws to destroy, but as coded messages from the deepest part of you. Once you learn to read them, they stop controlling you. There's something you keep doing, even though you promised yourself you'd stop. Maybe it's reaching for your phone the moment you feel bored. Maybe it's staying up too late, telling yourself just one more episode. Maybe it's snapping at someone you love, then regretting it instantly. You've tried to quit before. You've told yourself it's the last time. And yet, it's still here, still waiting for you in your weakest moments. Carl Jung wouldn't tell you to just try harder. He'd tell you this habit is not random. It's serving a purpose, one your conscious mind might not want to admit. And until you see that purpose, the habit will win. Jung had a word for the hidden forces inside us, the shadow. It's not evil. It's simply everything you've pushed away. Your anger, your fear, your shame, your hidden desires. Here's the strange part. When you bury something in the shadow, it doesn't disappear. It looks for another way out. And one of its favorite ways is through your habits. That endless scrolling, maybe it's a way to avoid the loneliness you don't want to feel. That overeating, maybe it's comfort for an emptiness you can't explain. That procrastination, maybe it's protection from the fear of not being good enough. The habit is the mask. The shadow is the face beneath it. You've probably seen this before. Someone quits smoking, but starts drinking more. They stop gambling, but spend hours lost in video games. The habit changes, but the pattern stays. That's because the real cause, the wound beneath, was never addressed. You can rip out the weed, but if the roots stay, it grows back. This is why willpower alone feels like running in circles. You're pulling at branches, not touching the soil. Jung's approach? Don't attack the habit first. Understand it. This is where most people make the breakthrough. The next time you feel the pull of your habit, don't fight it right away. Don't say, "I'm weak," or "I have no control." Instead, watch it. Notice the moment it starts. What happened just before? What thought or feeling showed up? Maybe you were criticized at work. Maybe you saw something online that made you compare yourself to others. Maybe an old memory surfaced. These aren't coincidences. They're the moments when your shadow reaches for its favorite disguise. Jung believed the unconscious speaks in symbols, and a habit is a living symbol, an action that says, something inside me needs attention. If you can read that language, you can respond differently. Instead of eating to feel safe, you can give yourself comfort another way. Instead of procrastinating to avoid failure, you can face the fear directly. Instead of numbing with distractions, you can sit with what you're feeling, even if it's uncomfortable. The habit isn't your enemy. It's the signal flare. Here's the part most people avoid, because it's harder than quitting. Once you know what your habit is covering, you have to meet that need honestly. If you're lonely, you might have to reach out, even if rejection scares you. If you're angry, You might have to speak up, even if it shakes your voice. If you're afraid, you might have to try anyway, and let yourself be imperfect. When you do this, something powerful happens. The habit starts to loosen on its own, because it's no longer carrying the weight it once did. There's a story of a man who couldn't stop working late. He told himself it was ambition, but when he finally looked deeper, he realized he was avoiding going home. Home meant silence. And in that silence, he'd have to face the fact that his marriage was falling apart. Work was the habit. Avoidance was the truth. Once he faced it, he didn't have to drown himself in work anymore. He could deal with the real wound, and the habit faded. Jung's goal was never to make people perfectly disciplined robots. His goal was to make them whole. And wholeness means every part of you, even the shadow, has a voice. The habits you hate are often the voice you've ignored. When you listen, you don't just break a pattern. You build a relationship with yourself that's honest. And once you have that, you don't need the old escape routes anymore. Right now, think of the habit you wish you could break. Instead of swearing it off, ask, what is this really giving me? What is it protecting me from? What feeling would I have to face if it disappeared today? Write the answer. Even if it feels uncomfortable, even if you want to avoid it, because that's where the real change begins. If you do this, if you treat your habits not as enemies, but as messengers, you'll start to notice something. You'll replace shame with understanding, frustration with curiosity, and slowly, the habits lose their power because you've stopped fighting yourself and you've started listening. And once you've truly heard the message, you'll never see a bad habit the same way again. There's a point where a habit stops being something you do and starts being who you think you are. You don't just say, I overthink. You say, I'm an overthinker. You don't just say, I put things off. You say, I'm lazy. It becomes a label you wear, and labels are heavy. They shape how you walk into a room, how you talk to people, how you see the future. Carl Jung would warn you, be careful with the words you use about yourself, because the unconscious listens. And if you keep telling it, this is who I am, it will work to prove you right, even if it means sabotaging you. Why do we cling to these labels, even when they hurt us? Because identity, even a painful one, is familiar. It's the map we use to navigate the world. If you've been the shy one your whole life, changing means stepping into a world without that anchor. If you've been the reckless one, letting it go means figuring out who you are without the thrill. The habit isn't just about comfort. It's about keeping your self-image intact. Jung said the ego, the I you think you are, loves stability, even if the stability is toxic. If your ego believes, I'm the kind of person who always fails, it will unconsciously seek situations that confirm it. Not because you want to fail, but because it keeps the story consistent. And here's the dangerous part. Your habits can be the perfect actors in that story. They play their part so well, you don't notice the script never changes. The first step to breaking free isn't discipline. It's disruption. Disruption means doing one small thing that doesn't fit the role you've been playing. If you've always been the quiet one, say one thing in the meeting, even if it's small. If you've always been the avoider, make the phone call you've been dreading. It's not about becoming a different person overnight. It's about shaking the identity enough that the ego has to rewrite the script. Here's something most self-help books don't tell you. Your bad habit is not the enemy. It's a negotiator. It's saying, I'll give you comfort, but you have to give me your growth. I'll give you safety, but you have to give me your truth. You can't win this by force. You win by offering the shadow a better deal. If your habit gives you comfort, find a comfort that doesn't cost you so much. If it gives you excitement, find excitement that builds you instead of breaking you. If it gives you escape, find rest that restores instead of numbs. Here's the part that's hardest to admit. Sometimes we don't want to change. Not because we like the damage the habit causes, but because the habit shields us from a bigger fear. A person might cling to gossip because it keeps them part of a group, and without it, they fear isolation. Someone might keep overspending because it makes them feel alive, and without it, they fear emptiness. When you ask, why can't I stop? The answer might be, because I'm not ready to face what's underneath. But waiting has a cost. The longer you let the habit run the show, the deeper it roots itself into your life. One day you realize it's not just a habit anymore. It's shaping your relationships, your career, your health. It's turning potential into regret. Jung believed that what we refuse to face will eventually rise in more destructive ways. Avoid a shadow long enough, and it stops whispering. It starts shouting. Facing your shadow takes courage. Not just the courage to admit the habit exists, but the courage to be seen without it. Without the sarcastic humor you use to hide pain. Without the busy schedule you use to avoid yourself. Without the perfectionism that keeps people from seeing the messy parts. This is why most people never get there. Because to them, losing the habit feels like losing part of themselves. But when you take that leap, something strange happens. You don't lose yourself. You meet yourself for the first time. We love transformation stories where someone changes overnight. But Jung knew the psyche works in seasons, not seconds. You'll have days where you fall back into the old habit. That doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human. The key is noticing it faster, understanding it deeper, and returning to the path sooner each time. Every return is a victory. Over time, the grip loosens. The habit becomes quieter. And one day, you realize it hasn't shown up in weeks, not because you forced it away, but because it's no longer needed. When you reach this point, the habit you once hated becomes something else, a teacher you've graduated from. You'll start seeing other people's habits differently too. You won't just see lazy or weak. You'll see a person protecting themselves the best way they know how. And that compassion for yourself and others is what Jung called individuation, becoming whole. Even now, you might feel resistance to changing. That's okay. Jung believed the unconscious moves at the pace it feels safe. But remember this, you always have a choice. Every day, You can repeat the same story, or you can write a new one. Every urge is a fork in the road, not between good and bad, but between repeating the past and creating the future. And every time you choose the future, you make it easier to choose it again. Here's the question Jung would leave you with. What in me benefits from keeping this habit alive? If you can answer that honestly and act on what you find, the change you've been chasing stops being a fight. It becomes a release. The moment you see your habits through this lens, they stop being proof that you're broken and start being proof that you're ready to grow. And the deeper we go next, the more you'll see why the habits you hate most might actually be the keys to your freedom. There comes a moment when you realize the habit was never the real enemy. It was the door. The problem was that you kept walking through it without noticing where it led. When you see the truth, the habit loses its power. It's like a stage actor whose lines you already know. They can keep performing, but you're no longer caught in the drama. Carl Jung often said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The habit was just the messenger. Now you've met the author. We love the language of destruction. Break the habit. Kill the craving. Crush the urge. But Jung's work points to something gentler and, paradoxically, more powerful. You don't break a habit. You integrate it. Because if you try to destroy it without understanding it, it will come back in another form, maybe smaller, maybe quieter, but still there. Integration means looking the habit in the eye and saying, "I see why you came, and I don't need you anymore." The layer beneath the urge. Every habit has two layers: the action and the ache it's protecting. The action might be scrolling endlessly, binge eating, staying in toxic relationships. The ache might be loneliness, boredom, self-doubt, or fear of failure. If you fight the action without healing the ache, the habit just finds another disguise. That's why real change often feels slower than we want, because the real work is underground. This isn't the discipline of force. It's the discipline of awareness. Awareness is asking, what am I avoiding right now? Instead of, how do I stop? It's noticing the pattern in the moment, instead of waking up to it 3 months later. It's catching the first thought before it turns into the old choice. The more you practice this kind of awareness, the less you'll feel like you're fighting yourself. Because you're not. You're listening to yourself. Here's something people rarely prepare for. When you change, you may outgrow people who were comfortable with your old self. If your habit was drinking every weekend, you might lose the group who only bonded over that. If your habit was gossip, you might lose the people who only called to share the latest drama. This is why so many people return to the habit, not because they miss it, but because they miss belonging. Jung would say, this is the test. Will you choose growth, even if it means walking alone for a while? Loneliness says, I need someone to fill this space. Solitude says, I can fill this space myself. When you turn loneliness into solitude, you discover something most people never will. The quiet is not empty. It's full of answers you could never hear before. Your creativity returns. Your clarity returns. Your energy, once scattered across 100 small distractions, comes back to you. And with it, the need for the habit fades even further. If you trace the habit back to its root, you'll find something surprising. A gift. The procrastinator learns patience and timing. The overthinker learns pattern recognition. The people-pleaser learns empathy. The key is to take the gift and leave the cage. Keep the skill, lose the self-sabotage. That's how you turn a habit into a stepping stone instead of a prison wall. The final test. Here's how you'll know you've truly changed. The habit presents itself again. Same trigger, same setting. And you don't even feel the pull. Not because you're forcing yourself to resist, but because you've outgrown the need. It's like trying on an old shirt that doesn't fit anymore. It's not a loss. It's proof you've moved on. When the habit is gone, there's a strange kind of violence. No craving, no mental tug-of-war, no secret shame. This silence can feel uncomfortable because it leaves room for something new. And that's the final challenge, deciding what to fill that space with. Most people unconsciously replace one habit with another. But if you sit in the silence long enough, you'll start building from intention, not impulse. That's when you stop managing habits and start creating a life. Jung believed small rituals could anchor big change. So instead of focusing on never slipping back, focus on returning to yourself every day. It could be a morning walk without your phone, a nightly question, what am I proud of today? A weekly moment to reflect, is this choice building me or breaking me? These anchors keep you connected to the self that no longer needs the old habit. Freedom isn't just not doing the habit. It's not even thinking about it. It's being in the same room, with the same triggers, and feeling nothing but clarity. It's knowing you can choose differently and wanting to. This is the kind of freedom Jung spoke about, the freedom that comes not from control, but from integration. Your life without the shadow. Without the shadow of the habit, your life starts to feel lighter. Not perfect, but real. You notice the way the air feels in the morning. You notice conversations more deeply. You notice you're not rushing to escape moments because you're finally living in them. The energy you once spent hiding, numbing, or running now fuels creation, connection, and growth. And that's when you realize the habit wasn't stealing your life. You were giving it away. And now you've taken it back. As you move forward, keep this in your mind. What version of me will this choice create? Ask it before you act, before you speak, before you respond. Because every habit, good or bad, is just a choice repeated until it becomes who you are. You have the pen now. The story is yours to write. The habits you've hated may have been holding your life together in their own clumsy way. But now, you've learned what they were really protecting, and you've found better ways to protect it. And the truth Jung would want you to carry is this: once you meet the self you were hiding from, you'll never want to go back.